What you resist not only persists, it grows stronger. Carl Jung. Chapter 1. The Call of the Unconscious. What if your greatest strength lives in the very part of you you've tried to avoid? What if the chaos you keep resisting is actually the door to your peace? Most people spend their lives on autopilot, working, performing, striving, doing everything they've been told will bring happiness, and yet something still feels off. Maybe you know this feeling. You've done the right things, followed the rules, checked the boxes, and yet beneath the surface, there's a quiet ache, a sense that something important is missing, though you can't quite name it. You find yourself repeating the same patterns, the same emotional loops, the same kinds of relationships. You make decisions that don't align with who you want to be. And afterward, you ask yourself, why do I keep doing this? This isn't a flaw in your personality. It's not a failure of willpower. It's a message from something deeper. It is the voice of your unconscious mind. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, taught that the conscious part of our mind is just the surface, a thin layer of awareness floating on top of a vast, unseen depth. Beneath that surface lives the unconscious, a mysterious, symbolic, and emotional realm that holds the parts of you you've forgotten, ignored, or never fully known. And even though you may not be aware of it, it shapes everything. Your beliefs, your habits, your relationships, your fears, your dreams. Jung believed that the path to freedom begins not with trying to control life, but with becoming aware of the deeper forces within us. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung said, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But what exactly lives in this hidden realm? Emotions you were never allowed to feel. Memories you buried because they hurt. Traits you were told were unacceptable. Your anger, your sexuality, your power, your softness, your shadow, your wounds, but also your creativity, your intuition, your capacity for deep love, your inner compass, your authentic self. We live in a world that rewards control, speed, performance, and perfection. But in doing so, we've lost contact with the soul, the deep inner reality that gives life meaning. And yet, the soul never stops calling. That call can come in many forms. A recurring dream with strange, haunting images. A moment of stillness where something in you stirs. A crisis that shatters your plans and asks you to start again. An emptiness that no achievement seems to fill. Or a quiet inner voice that whispers, "This isn't who I'm meant to be." Jung called this moment the beginning of individuation, the soul's natural urge to become whole. Individuation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. It's about reuniting with the parts of yourself you've lost and discovering that they were never your enemies, but your teachers. And like every mythic journey, it starts with a call, a moment of recognition, a turning point. It doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't offer guarantees, but it always tells the truth. It asks you to slow down, to listen more deeply, to look not outward, but inward, to ask not, "What should I do with my life?" but "Who am I, really?" And that question, if you are brave enough to ask it, changes everything. If you're here right now, watching this video, listening to these words, then maybe, just maybe, a part of you has already felt that call. That is not a coincidence. It is a sign that something in you is ready to awaken. In the chapters ahead, we will walk through the core of Jung's teachings, the shadow, the dream world, archetypes, and the journey toward wholeness, not as theories, but as tools for your own inner transformation. So before we go any further, pause for a moment. Take a breath, feel the silence beneath these words, and ask yourself, honestly, are you ready to listen to what your soul is trying to tell you? Because that voice, soft, subtle, ancient, has never left you. It's only been waiting for you to return. Chapter 2. The Shadow, Your Other Half. There is a part of you that you are taught to hide, a part you instinctively push away, not because it's evil, but because it made others uncomfortable. It didn't fit the story of who you were supposed to be. Carl Jung called this part the shadow. The shadow isn't your darkness. It's your disowned self. It holds the qualities, emotions, instincts, and truths that you've been conditioned to reject, not because they're bad, but because they didn't feel safe to express. What lives in the shadow? The shadow contains your unexpressed anger, your unspoken sadness, your hidden envy, your unmet desires. It also contains your suppressed joy, your raw honesty, your untapped confidence, your spiritual depth. Everything that didn't get permission in childhood, in society, or in your family was quietly exiled into the unconscious. But here's what most people don't realize. What you push into the dark does not disappear. It doesn't vanish. It waits. It waits in your body, in your nervous system, in your emotional responses. It waits in your relationships. It shows up in your triggers, your dreams, your recurring patterns. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to reconnect with you, because it is not other. It is you, the part that has been unloved, unseen, unheard, and yet still alive. How the shadow speaks. You can't see the shadow directly, but you can feel its presence. In the rage that seems to come out of nowhere. In the shame that surfaces when someone sees you too clearly. In the sarcasm that masks vulnerability. In the overreactions that don't quite make sense. In the patterns that keep repeating, even when you know better. And most of all, in your judgments of others. This is what Jung meant when he said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you find yourself strongly triggered by someone, ask yourself, what do they represent to me? What part of myself am I rejecting through them? The shadow is the mirror of the soul. It reveals the parts of you you're not yet willing to own. You may despise arrogance in others because you've buried your own sense of power. You may resent neediness because you've learned to survive by being overly independent. You may idolize kindness because you've silenced your own tenderness. This is projection, and projection is not failure. It is an invitation. From rejection to reintegration. The great lie of the modern world is that we must be positive at all times, that emotions like anger, fear, or jealousy are signs of weakness, that we should only show the polished, filtered, acceptable versions of ourselves. But Jung knew better. He believed that true psychological growth doesn't come from self-improvement. It comes from self-integration. That means facing what you've rejected, not to act it out or indulge it blindly, but to recognize that even the most uncomfortable parts of you carry wisdom and energy. Your anger may be protecting your boundaries. Your fear may be pointing toward unresolved pain. Your sadness may be longing for connection. Your ambition, once judged as selfish, may hold the key to your creativity and purpose. The path is not always easy. Facing your shadow can be painful. It may bring up old wounds. It may challenge your identity. It may shatter illusions. And your ego, the part of you that wants to stay in control, will resist. It wants to protect the image you've carefully constructed. But the shadow doesn't care about image. It cares about truth. When you begin to integrate the shadow, you don't become darker. You become more whole. You gain clarity. You stop overreacting. You start understanding others more deeply. You become less afraid of yourself. That's not weakness, that's power. The shadow is not your enemy. One of the most healing realizations you can have is this: there is nothing wrong with you. There are only parts of you waiting to be seen. The shadow isn't something to eliminate. It's something to reclaim. It's a lifelong process, not a one-time event. But every time you make contact with a part of yourself you once rejected, you take a step toward authenticity. You take a step toward peace. You take a step toward becoming you. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the shadow shows up in everyday life, not in theory, but in your reactions, your patterns, and your relationships. Because once you learn to see it clearly, you'll realize that the shadow was never something to fear, but something to listen to. Chapter 3. Confronting the Shadow. How to recognize it. Understanding the shadow in theory is one thing, but truly seeing it in your everyday thoughts, in your emotions, in your relationships, is something else entirely. This is where real transformation begins, because the shadow doesn't just live in forgotten memories or childhood trauma. It lives here, now, in the way you respond to others, in your language, in the stories you tell, and the ones you avoid. And here's the paradox. The shadow hides in plain sight. It's not buried in some mystical vault deep within your psyche. It reveals itself constantly, not in silence, but in signals. You just have to learn how to listen. Let's look at 4 key ways the shadow shows up in everyday life, and how you can begin to recognize its presence. 1. Projection. The mirror of the unconscious. One of the most common and revealing ways your shadow makes itself known is through projection. Projection happens when you unconsciously assign your own disowned traits or emotions onto someone else. It's the psyche's way of saying, I can't accept this in me, so I'll see it in you. You might feel an instant dislike for someone without any clear reason, or feel an exaggerated irritation when someone is too confident, too emotional, too ambitious. Your mind tells you they're arrogant, fake, manipulative. But your reaction feels stronger than the situation calls for. That's the giveaway. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Of course, people can genuinely be toxic or difficult, but when your emotional charge feels personal, when you feel triggered, that's a signal. That's your shadow trying to speak. Ask yourself, what is this really about? What part of myself am I seeing in them and resisting? You may discover that what you dislike in others reflects something in yourself that you haven't yet made peace with. That realization, painful as it might be, is a doorway to integration. 2. Repetition, the echo of the shadow. Another way your shadow shows up is through patterns that repeat, over and over. Do you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners? Do you sabotage opportunities just as things are going well? Do you always play the caretaker, the rescuer, the outsider? These are not just bad luck. They're messages. Your unconscious is trying to show you something. And until it's made conscious, it keeps looping, not to punish you, but to invite you inward. Each cycle is a mirror. Each mistake is a breadcrumb. Until the lesson is seen, it repeats. Not because you're broken, but because your shadow is asking to be acknowledged. 3. Emotional intensity. The shadow speaks through feeling. The shadow doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in emotion, often raw, intense, and confusing. That flash of jealousy you try to brush off, the shame that surfaces after someone criticizes you, the sudden anger when you feel dismissed or unseen. These emotions are not random. They are messengers. And if you pause to listen, really listen, they can show you where the pain lives. Ask, what part of myself feels threatened? What am I ashamed of? What am I afraid others will see in me? You may uncover unmet needs, unprocessed grief, even a powerful gift that was once shut down. Your emotions carry intelligence. Let them guide you without letting them control you. 4. Humor, dreams, slips, the shadow leaks out. Not all shadow material is heavy or dramatic. Sometimes it sneaks out in subtle, even playful ways. A sarcastic joke that lands too sharply. A slip of the tongue that says more than you intended. A recurring dream that you can't quite forget. These moments are cracks in the mask, places where your deeper self is trying to peek through. Especially in dreams, where the ego's defenses are down, the shadow comes alive. Jung called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. Through symbols, animals, landscapes, and strange encounters, your psyche tells you what your conscious mind is not yet ready to face. So when a dream disturbs you or moves you, don't ignore it. Write it down, reflect on it, Ask, what is this image trying to tell me? Often, the dream will answer. The key: curiosity without judgment. Here's the most important lesson in shadow work. Don't shame yourself for having a shadow. We all have one. It's not a defect. It's part of the design. Recognizing your shadow isn't about blame. It's about honesty. It's about compassion. It's about learning to say, this, too, is part of me, and I'm willing to see it. When you stop running from the parts of yourself you feared, you reclaim the energy that was lost in resistance. You become less reactive, more grounded, more whole, and the world around you begins to shift. Not because it changed, but because you did. In the next chapter, we'll travel even deeper into the realm of dreams, archetypes, and the collective unconscious, a place where ancient symbols live and where your inner world becomes a language of transformation. But before we go there, ask yourself honestly, what is your shadow trying to show you right now? And are you finally ready to listen? Chapter 4: Dreams, Symbols, and the Collective Unconscious. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast forest. The trees are tall, ancient, and whispering with a language you don't fully understand. The air is thick with mystery, and although you cannot see where it leads, you feel an invisible pull, not outward, but inward. This is the entrance to what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, a vast inner realm shared by all of humanity, a place not of fantasy, but of psychological reality. The two layers of the psyche. Most of us are familiar with the idea of the personal unconscious, the part of the mind that stores our forgotten memories, traumas, and emotions. But beneath that is something much older, deeper, wider. The collective unconscious is the inherited layer of the psyche. It's not shaped by your personal history, but by the entire history of the human species. It is the psychic DNA passed down through generations, the patterns, instincts, and universal images that live within you, whether you know it or not. Jung called these patterns archetypes, and they're not just concepts. They are living forces. They shape your dreams, your relationships, your fears, fantasies, longings, and even your idea of what a life well lived looks like. Dreams, the language of the unconscious. Every night, you enter another world, a world where time bends, where people shift identities, where animals speak, landscapes shift, and logic fades. In this world, your ego sleeps, and your unconscious speaks. To Jung, dreams were not random static or mental noise. They were deeply intelligent, messages from the unconscious disguised in symbolic form. Why symbols? Because the unconscious does not speak in language, it speaks in images. Symbol is the natural language of the soul. A house in your dream might represent your psyche, with rooms that reflect different parts of your life. A snake might mean fear, or wisdom, or deep transformation. A child might symbolize innocence, a new beginning, or even the wounded inner self. The meaning depends on you. but the patterns, the archetypes, are universal. Archetypes, the psychic blueprints of humanity. Archetypes are not characters from stories. They are the story beneath the story. They are primal, symbolic energies that live in you and in every human being. Some of the key archetypes Jung identified include the shadow, the parts of you you deny or reject. The anima, animus, the inner feminine and masculine qualities. The hero, the part of you called to grow through struggle. The wise old man, woman, inner guidance, wisdom, intuition. The self, the full integrated wholeness you are meant to become. These archetypes surface in myths, fairy tales, spiritual teachings, and, most importantly, your dreams. You may dream of a wise woman leading you through the forest, of a dark figure chasing you, your shadow in disguise, of a death and rebirth symbolizing inner transformation. These images are not meaningless. They are signposts. They are your psyche's way of trying to get your attention. Why this inner work matters. Most people shrug off their dreams. They call them weird, forget them quickly, or laugh them off. But Jung believed something radical, that our dreams know us better than we know ourselves. They show us what we're avoiding. They point to unresolved emotions, forgotten memories, or parts of ourselves that are trying to wake up. Through dream work, we begin to bridge the gap between the conscious ego and the deeper wisdom of the self. And by working with symbols, we don't just understand ourselves. We begin to remember who we are. How to begin. Working with dreams and symbols. You don't need to be a psychologist or a mystic. You simply need to pay attention. Here's how to start. Keep a dream journal beside your bed. Write down your dreams as soon as you wake, even if it's just fragments. Don't rush to interpret. Instead, feel into the images. Sit with them. Ask, oh, what is this symbol trying to say to me? Oh, where have I seen this energy before? In myself, in others, in myth, in art. Look for patterns over time. Are there recurring images, characters, themes? Your unconscious is telling a story, piece by piece. Over time, you'll begin to recognize the intelligence behind the chaos. You'll see that your inner world is not random. It's meaningful. The inner world is not just yours. It's ours. Working with dreams and archetypes does more than heal your past. It connects you to something larger than yourself. You begin to realize your struggles are not unique. They are human. And the symbols you carry within you, they've lived in the stories of every culture, across every age. You are not alone on this path. You walk it with thousands before you, and your soul knows the way. In the next chapter, we'll bring all of this together as we explore the heart of Jung's psychology. Individuation, the journey of becoming your truest, most whole self. Because your dreams may be strange, your symbols may be ancient, and your archetypes may be powerful. But in the end, their purpose is deeply personal. to help you remember who you truly are, and to guide you step by step back to yourself. Chapter 5. Individuation, the Path to Wholeness. What if the goal of life isn't to be good, successful, or liked, but to become whole? Carl Jung believed that the central task of human development is a process he called individuation. Individuation is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you truly are, underneath the masks, the conditioning, the fears, and the expectations of the world. It's a journey inward, not upward. Not towards perfection, but toward integration. Because within you lives not just your conscious personality, the part you show to the world, but also your shadow, your forgotten gifts, your inner archetypes, your dreams, and your deeper self. Individuation is the process of bringing those parts together into conscious alignment. Wholeness versus perfection. In our modern world, we're taught to chase perfection. Be more productive. Be more attractive. Be more impressive. But Jung warned that the pursuit of perfection is a form of spiritual inflation, an attempt to rise above the mess of being human. He offered something far more honest and far more healing. Wholeness. To be whole means to embrace your light and your dark, your confidence and your doubt, your joy and your pain. It means accepting the contradictions within you, not as flaws, but as features of a rich, complex, evolving psyche. The stages of individuation. Individuation is not a straight path. It unfolds over time, often through crisis, confrontation, and discovery. Some of its key steps include 1. Encountering the shadow. Confronting what you've repressed or denied. 2. Integrating the anima, animus. Balancing your inner masculine, feminine energies. 3. Listening to dreams and symbols, receiving guidance from the unconscious. 4. Distinguishing ego from self, realizing that you are not just your thoughts, roles, or achievements. 5. Aligning with the self, living from a deeper inner center, guided by purpose rather than persona. This is not self-improvement. This is self-realization. How to begin the process. Individuation starts with awareness. By noticing your patterns, listening to your emotions, tracking your dreams, and questioning your reactions, you begin to see the deeper forces at play in your life. Ask yourself, where am I living inauthentically? What parts of me have I rejected? What would it mean to become fully myself? This work takes time. It requires honesty, patience, and often discomfort. But it also leads to freedom. The kind of freedom that comes from no longer being at war with yourself. The reward of individuation. As you integrate more of who you are, something powerful happens. You feel more grounded, more centered, more alive. You stop chasing validation. You become less reactive. You begin to act from depth, not compulsion. And slowly, you begin to align with your inner compass, the self, the archetype of wholeness and meaning. That is the path of individuation. Not to become perfect, but to become true. In the next and final chapter, we'll explore why Jung's teachings are more relevant than ever in today's world, and how this inner work can ripple outward into every part of your life. Because transformation is not just personal, it's essential. Chapter 6. Jung Today. Why it still matters. We live in a world of constant connection, yet more and more people feel disconnected. Disconnected from themselves, from others, from meaning. There is more information than ever before, and yet less wisdom, more options, and more confusion, more productivity, and more burnout. In this chaotic, overstimulated, achievement-driven world, people are not just tired. They're spiritually starved. Carl Jung died in 1961, but his work may be more relevant today than it was in his own time. Why? Because Jung didn't just study the mind, he studied the soul. And he knew that the deepest human crisis is not material. It's existential. The modern mind is overwhelmed. We are flooded with noise, news, notifications, opinions. But few of us are taught to look inward, to sit with silence, to explore the architecture of our own psyche. Instead, we build lives on personas, roles we play to be accepted. The achiever, the pleaser, the rebel, the expert. We learn to wear masks and then forget we're wearing them. We lose touch with who we really are beneath it all. Jung called this living from the ego alone, a shallow version of ourselves, disconnected from the deeper self. It's no wonder anxiety and depression are so common. The soul longs for meaning, and when it's ignored, it speaks through symptoms, dreams, crises, and breakdowns. Jung's tools are still tools. What Jung gave us was not just theory, it was a roadmap, the shadow, for confronting what we hide. The archetypes for understanding our inner cast of characters, individuation, for becoming whole, dreams, for decoding the language of the unconscious, symbols and myths, for making sense of the human experience. These tools are timeless because the human psyche has not changed. Technology has evolved. Culture has shifted, but the inner world, the fears, the longings, the wounds, remains strikingly familiar. Spirituality without dogma. Jung also offers a unique bridge, a way to engage with spirituality without dogma. He wasn't against religion, but he believed that true transformation happens through direct inner experience, not belief alone. His work opens a space where psychology meets mysticism, where science meets symbol, where the soul has a voice, even in the age of algorithms. Why it matters now. Right now, many people are quietly searching, not just for success, but for authenticity, not just for happiness, but for meaning. Jung's ideas matter today because they offer more than comfort. They offer clarity. They explain why we suffer, why we repeat patterns, why we feel split inside. And they show us how to begin healing. His message is simple, but profound. You are not just what the world sees. You are also what you hide. and who you could become. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together and leave you with a reminder. This isn't just information. This is an invitation to wake up, to look inward, and to reclaim the truth of who you are. Chapter 7. The Invitation to Transformation. You've made it to the end of a long journey, but in truth, this is only the beginning. Over the last chapters, we've explored the landscape of the psyche, from the depths of the unconscious to the symbols that speak through your dreams, from the rejected parts of yourself that live in shadow to the path of individuation that leads toward inner wholeness. But this journey is not just philosophical. It's not about abstract ideas or historical theories. It's about you, your life, your patterns, your pain, your potential. Jung didn't write for textbooks. He wrote for people like you, navigating a world that often pulls them away from their center. He saw the human being not as a problem to be fixed, but as a mystery to be unfolded. And now, having touched some of that mystery, the question is, what will you do with it? What you've inherited. The moment you were born, you inherited more than a name, a family, or a place in society. You inherited a psyche shaped by millennia of human evolution. A mind built from the same building blocks that gave rise to myth, ritual, story, and symbol. This means that inside you lives the hero, the child, the healer, the warrior, the sage. Inside you also lives the shadow, the victim, the trickster, the lover. These are not roles to play. They are energies to recognize and integrate. But no one ever taught you how. The world taught you how to achieve, perform, survive. But it rarely teaches you how to descend, to turn inward and face what you've buried. That's why so many people feel lost, even when they appear successful. That's why you can feel lonely, even in a room full of people, why you can feel like a stranger to yourself. The call to come home. Transformation doesn't begin with big decisions. It begins with a whisper, a feeling that something is missing. A quiet call from within that says, there is more to you than this. Not more to achieve, more to discover. The path of inner work is not linear. It's not clean. It's not always comfortable. But it is real. It requires you to unlearn the stories you've been told. That strength means silence. That worth must be earned. That emotions are weakness. That you are your past. It invites you to face yourself, not just the parts that shine, but the parts you've denied, rejected, or misunderstood. Because healing doesn't come from fixing yourself. It comes from embracing yourself. Where the real journey begins. Everything you've learned in this video, the shadow, the self, the archetypes, the dreams, the process of individuation, they are not things to be studied from a distance. They are invitations to live differently, to slow down and listen when something inside you feels restless, to notice the images that rise up in your dreams, to explore the emotions that make you uncomfortable, to question the masks you wear, to reclaim the parts of yourself you were once told to hide. And slowly, through this kind of radical self-honesty, you begin to reconnect with your own depth. What transformation really looks like? People think transformation means becoming someone new. But real transformation means becoming who you already are, underneath the noise. It's not about escaping your past, but understanding it. Not about being better, but being whole. You'll still feel fear, sadness, anger, but you won't run from them. You'll feel more, not less. But you'll know what to do with what you feel. You'll start to see patterns not as punishments, but as teachers. You'll begin to meet others more authentically, because you're no longer hiding from yourself. That is the quiet power of individuation. You don't become perfect. You become true. Why this work matters, not just for you. Here's something Jung deeply understood. Inner work is not selfish. When you heal yourself, you also heal your relationships. When you integrate your shadow, you stop projecting it onto others. When you awaken to your own depth, you become a mirror for others to do the same. A conscious life ripples outward. A person in alignment with their self changes the world, not by force, but by presence. So if you ever doubt whether this inner journey is worth it, remember, the world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more wholeness, and that begins within. Before you go, if something in this video spoke to you, if a part of you felt recognized, seen, or challenged, then I invite you to keep going. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stay open. And if you want to continue exploring Jungian psychology, dreams, shadow work, and the deeper layers of the human soul, subscribe to this channel, Soul of the Mind. This is a space where we go beyond the surface, where ancient wisdom meets modern insight, where your inner world is not a problem to fix, but a mystery to explore. Together, we'll continue this journey, step by step, symbol by symbol, shadow by shadow, toward the truth of who you really are. Thank you for watching. And remember, your soul is always speaking. The question is, are you listening?